So, as we said, we're going to take you through the AI forum. So the presenters that we've got today are Ian McLeod, who is the medical director within Emrad and also substantively Radiology's MSK in Nottingham University Hospitals. We're joined by Mike Watson, who is the digital lead for AI in the East Midlands Health and Academic Science Network, and Matt Dunn, who is medical head of radiation physics within Nottingham University. And then also we're going to be joined by Radiobotics, Lucida and ADOC, who are your three AI providers today. On the screen now you have a QR code. So what we'd like you to do is, if you've got the technology, scan the code. 2 questions: where are you from? Because we have a lot of email addresses that just say NHS. So if you can just provide in there where you're actually from and a little bit about yourself. And again, if you don't have the QR code, then please just use the chat. So we'll just leave that for a moment, just while there's quite a few more joining us. And if you can't scan it, you can click on it. It's just going to take you through to a form, onto a Google form. And we will just bring that again up at the end of the screen. So we're going to just share with you the agenda then for the next hour. So next slide, please, Emily. So we're going to have some aims and introductions from Ian. Mike's going to take you through the AI review process. So how does this AI forum actually work with Emrad and our partners? Then, as I say, we're going to go on to the showcases. Then we're going to hear from Matt about the support that we will be able to provide during this forum. I'll give you a little bit of an update on some of the AI that we've been doing within Emrad to date, talk about the potential funding streams. Then we'll have where we've got time, a Q&A session, talk about the governance and just some of the processes, and then on to the next steps. So first off then, next slide, I would like to introduce you to Ian, who is our medical director and who's going to give you an update of to what exactly is Emrad and what we do. So Ian, over to yourself.
Thanks, Jack. Hello, everybody, and welcome. As you can see, hovering over my shoulder, I'm Ian. I'm the Emrad medical director. And I think I'd just like to start off by reiterating it would be great if you could fill in the bits about who you are, because this is the first time we've run this. We've got almost 70 odd people kicking around, the vast majority of whom won't know each other. And it would be lovely to turn this into a regular, happy, convivial thing. So knowing who we're talking to would be immensely useful. It would also be lovely if at the end you could give us your feedback. There will be a link coming up to another form at the end, just to tell us what went well and what might work better next time. So whilst you can sit back and enjoy your sandwiches, there's just a wee bit of work to do, if that's all right. So bearing in mind that we don't necessarily know each other, I thought I'd spend just a few moments going through who or what Emrad is, and a little bit about why we're here. And then I'll hand over to everyone else who knows far more about how we're going to do what we want to do. And as a background, we're really looking at this from a regional thing, because Emrad is the East Midlands Imaging Network. We're a network of 8 NHS trusts, the radiology department or imaging departments within those. We've got 14 hospitals kicking around our region, 5 million people, give or take, and we represent just about 1 in 12 of every acute image that's taken in England. So we are a bit of a big thing. We've got 3.5 billion images, which is, as you can see there, millions and millions and millions of studies, piles and piles and piles of data, and we're straddling quite a few different geographical and administrative boundaries. So it could be a little bit unwieldy, but Emily, could you move on to the next slide, please? We started all of this almost a decade ago now. Emily, would you mind moving on to the next slide? Thanks. And these are to do radiologically, But we've grown into much more than that, and we are now a network where we're looking at everything behind that. So it's the people bits that are far more important. And that kind of pertains to why we're here, because we're an NHS organisation. And as such, our primary focus is the care that we deliver to our patients. That's the be all and end all. But we've got to have in the back of our mind that actually, particularly given the stresses of the last 2 years, we need an eye on our staff as well. We've got tens of thousands of people working pretty much flat out, just like everywhere. And their well-being is incredibly important. And this is where AI, I think, comes into it. If we're lucky, the AI providers that we're working with can address one, maybe both of those problems. And we want to have a good handle on how we're impacting on patient care, how we're making life better or easier for the staff as well. And AI isn't going away. It can address these issues. It's not going anywhere. We need a good process for dealing with this, because we know it's happening around and about the place. There are projects all over the shop looking at AI software. And it would be criminal as a network if we didn't maximize that. We're all pretty much in the same boat. Yes, there's local variations around and about, but we've largely all got the same stresses and the same needs. So as a network, we want to share the good stuff, and we want to find out what's going well in one place so we can try and get that working well everywhere. And that's the point of this forum, is to bring in all of the experience and expertise around the region and bring it to bear on this. We're absolutely not about taking anything over. We're very happy to kind of sit in the background on this, but we'd love to have an overview of what's going on, because the likelihood is what you're doing locally in your department will probably benefit people elsewhere. The other great advantages that we have is we do have tens of thousands of people working here. We've got tens of thousands of people who know exactly what their organisation needs at any one stage. So the other arm to this forum is to act as a place where we can ask things back to the companies. And we'll hear 3 very nice presentations about products that are being kind of rolled out at the moment, but we also want to have a moment to say, well, what else do we need? It's lovely that you've got that. That looks really interesting, but actually, have you got this? I've got a real problem with booking. What have you got that can solve that? So it's a two-way thing. We're going to hear things from the companies. Please feel free to talk back to them and start a dialogue with them, because this is all about relationship building. And that's, I think, the way that we're going to harness the power of the network. That's the aspirational, idealistic bit of it. That's the easy job from my point of view. I'm going to hand over now and we can start talking through the nitty gritty. Jack said, if you've got any questions, stick them in the chat and we'll pick them up as we go along.
Lovely. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Ian. So I'm now going to hand you over to Mike Watson. So Emrad has been working very closely with the East Midlands Academic Health Science Network, and Mike's going to take you through what we've been collaborating on and what does this process look like going forward. So Mike, over to yourself.
Thanks, Jack, and good afternoon, everybody. Just to reiterate, I'm from the East Midlands Academic Health Science Network, and I support our digital and AI transformation portfolio. What I wanted to do, as I know you want to look at the presentations, but I just wanted to sort of take a couple of minutes to set out how we see the AI forum working, so that we can make sure that we get the right innovation into the network and to other areas of need in the NHS. I want to just talk you through it. What I've tried to show here is, as you might imagine, when people want to innovate with AI and digital, they want to engage with the NHS, and rightly so. They want to understand what's going on, but also there's a large focus, I think, quite often on the need to make sure that their technology integrates with the NHS, that they can access and look at NHS data and access pipelines, and also see if they can integrate with the production platforms. So there's often quite a tendency to want to engage with the NHS on the technical dimensions of their innovation. What we want to do, though, is sort of broaden that out a bit and make sure that when we're thinking about AI and innovation and its adoption into areas like imaging, is that we look at other areas that mean, I look at other areas that help, that hopefully make sure that we can be confident that the technology is actually solving, I think Ian's mentioned this, is actually solving a problem the NHS has, or the imaging network actually has, and that problem is significant enough to be addressed. You know, it's a big enough issue, it's a big enough concern that warrants the NHS looking at it. And what we also want to do is make sure that that AI can realise, the NHS can realise the benefits that AI can release, that is safe to both patients, citizens, and to the staff. So what we want to do is make sure that when we're looking at AI innovation through this forum, we're not only considering the technical elements of it, but looking at the broader value proposition that an AI innovation can bring to the NHS and to the imaging network. Next slide, please, Emily. So building on this, we want to make sure the AI forum is providing the right support across the whole adoption pathway. So as an AHSN, we think about this adoption pathway in 4 big steps. The discover, develop, and deploy and sustain. And what we're wanting to do is use the forum as a way of making sure that we can provide support across those 4 stages. So A, as Ian was saying, that we can discover innovations that can meet the needs that the imaging network has, or other areas of the NHS have, but also then provide support to develop those AI innovations by providing the NHS insight, providing access to the data that I mentioned a bit earlier, but also trying to give a view about how that innovation actually might tangibly work in a real world setting. Then we want to help innovators to think about how they might deploy that. So once you've got that value, once you've got that innovation in place, how can you then support that rollout so that the innovation has a broader impact? How can you sustain and spread that innovation across the NHS? And then what we want to do is also think about using the forum as a way of sustaining that innovation. So how can we show that the benefits that the AI can bring are able to be released and can continue to almost feed the business case for broader adoption? We know that lots of innovations work in one place, but it's always hard to make the business case in other areas, and we want to make sure there's a repeatable way of doing this type of work. Next slide, please, Emily. So what does all that mean, really? That's all good conceptual stuff. What we want to do here is we've set out a process for AI innovation to engage with Emrad. So we're trying to think about this as about setting up a single front door for inquiries about collaborating with Emrad. We know that lots of innovations and innovators can approach the NHS in multiple ways, and they have to be able to navigate the NHS system. So what we want to try and do is make sure that we consolidate all the potential AI that Emrad could take advantage of and bring it into one place and one process. So what we're asking for is people that want to innovate and engage with Emrad do that through a single process. And that can be triggered by filling in the engagement form on the East Midlands Academic Health Science Network website, and I can put a link into the chat a bit later. With that initial form being completed, what we will then do is hold a single and joint diagnostic with the team members from the Academic Health Science Network and from Emrad, where we'll sit down and try and understand a bit more about the problem being solved by that innovation, a bit about the technology that's being proposed, and then also try and understand through that what the key things that need to be considered for the adoption of that AI into Emrad or into the NHS. From that, we can get a sense about what the support that might be needed in order to do that across each of those four steps I set out a bit earlier. Then what we'll do is we'll bring that to the forum and then have a discussion about what the appetite is to support that innovation and what the available support might be to take that innovation forward. I mean, ultimately, what we want to do is make sure we support the right innovations for Emrad and imaging in the East Midlands. So we see this AI forum as being the perfect way of doing that. As Ian was saying, is trying to bring everything into one place, make sure that we're looking at things in the round and finding the opportunities to connect and collaborate across the entire network. Thank you. Over to you, Jackie. Jax.
Almost. So thank you very much, Mike. So as Mike said, we're trying to get this to a cohesive process. We might not get it right the first time, but at least we've set ourselves path going forward. So what we're going to do now is hear from the first of our three speakers. We're going to hear from Lucida. So whilst Anthony is just getting his slide deck ready, so we're just going to stop sharing and introduce. So we have already had some collaboration with Lucida over the last year on a piece of work, also collaborating with GE and the AI orchestrator, which we'll talk about towards the end in terms of next steps and so forth. So Anthony, over to you. Lucida Medical, what AI do you have? What is the problem that it's going to solve? What's your innovation and what benefits would we see from this product?
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jackie. Can you hear me clearly?
We can, thank you.
Super. Always check. I've had too many catches, but it's a real pleasure to meet you all, and thank you so many. Thanks to so many of you for joining. I hope this is going to be an interesting and if brief introduction to Lucida Medical and the work that we do. I'm Anthony Ricks. I'm the CEO and co-founder. I set Lucida Medical up now the best part of 2.5 years ago with Professor Evis Sala, who's the Professor of Cancer Imaging at the University of Cambridge. And really our goal, our big picture, is that we want to find cancer early. And let's talk specifically about that in the context of prostate cancer, which is where we're starting. Prostate cancer is the most common male cancer. Worldwide, 1.4 million were diagnosed in 2020 pre-COVID. In the UK, that's about 60,000. We have about 200,000 a year referred to urology clinics across the UK, across the 4 nations, with usually either symptoms or an elevated PSA blood test. Of those, 60,000 or so end up with a cancer diagnosis. We're not doing a very good job of prostate cancer management. 12,000 die a year. Prostate cancer is a relatively slow-moving cancer and relatively easy to treat if it's caught early, but we're missing it. In fact, 47% of prostate cancers are found at stage 3 and stage 4 in England, according to the latest National Prostate Cancer Audit data. There are a number of reasons behind that, and I don't propose to go into that here, but we're bringing part of the puzzle that I think can help address these issues. Looking at the NHS, over the last decade or so, prostate MRI, and that's specifically pre-biopsy MRI for prostate cancer, has helped to reduce biopsy rates and helped to reduce that issue of late detection. It isn't completely solving either of those, but it's been a significant step forward, and the Emrad hospitals now, I think, all use prostate MRI. We know that hospitals are struggling in particular to have the specialist genitourinary radiology support people experienced in prostate reporting. It's known that experience matters very significantly with prostate cancer, with the more experienced individuals and more experienced teams, generally both more sensitive and more specific. However, we also know from major studies that experienced radiologists can miss up to 15% of cancers. This is from a big Cochrane meta-analysis, and that about 30% of all the patients coming in the door end up getting a negative cancer, sometimes significantly more than that. And those are all arguably potentially avoidable biopsies, which themselves have side effects and are quite costly. And so we've now got this pathway that's suffering both from underdiagnosis and late disease, and also with challenges of overdiagnosis and overtreatment, especially excessive biopsies, and it's really costly. So we'd love to see what we can do. For those of you who don't know about prostate MRI, these are 2 of the sequences in a prostate MR examination. This is actually taken from the work that we did with GE and Emrad last year. MRI is great because actually you can look at multiple properties of tissue, and that helps you distinguish benign abnormalities from cancers. This is a T2 map, this is ADC. We'll come back to this particular study a bit later. So Lucida's goal is to equip radiologists with AI that's as accurate as possible to help them analyse MRI scans like those to find cancer as quickly, simply and accurately as possible. The way it works is we start with completely standard MRI and tests, in this case, the PSA blood test and any other referral history, like whether the patient has symptoms. These are all fed into our software. Pi processes these complex four-dimensional multi-parametric MRI images. It addresses quite a number of different tasks. The radiologist has to calculate volumes, has to identify lesions. Some hospitals perform fusion biopsy, so we output segmentations like this that can be fed direct to biopsy machines for that fusion process. You can also render these in 3D. Nobody's yet using these for surgery, but we've certainly been told that surgeons would find these interesting from a point of view of surgery planning. And lastly, we look to support the review and reporting and decision-making process. We produce a template report in text or graphical format. If you use the graphical version and your PACS supports it, you can actually upload rich reports like this, but all of the imaging, all of the segmentations are also uploaded to the PACS. And it's a CE marked medical device for prostate cancer diagnosis. Just to spend a few moments really kind of talking about the problems and the benefits. And Ian alluded earlier to some of the challenges that you face across Emrad, and those really scale across the whole of the UK. So we're trying to make the reporting process more streamlined. We're certainly not trying to replace radiologists, but it's not great use of a radiologist's time to calculate a volume when an AI can do that very straightforwardly and very accurately. So aim to streamline the work. But critically, we're trying to both find cancer and rule patients out as accurately as possible. And here AI has an unfair advantage over people in that you can train it on hundreds or thousands of gold standard cases. And it's not unreasonable. Well, I would say this, I'm an engineer, but to think that AI might be able to make a very good decision there and help clinicians make their final recommendations. If we can cut biopsies in particular, you can save a lot of money. We have health economic analysis that was done for us by Health Enterprise East. In their study, they showed that we could potentially save £139 per patient over the patient's lifetime, through using this software to make more accurate diagnoses. And then finally, we're focusing on easy integration. It needs to fit straight into the workflow. This nicely connects with the work that we did with Jackie and her colleagues and with GE last year. Hat tip to Jan Bager from GE, who I think is also on the call. We were really lucky to be selected by GE and Emrad to join the GE Edison Accelerator Programme. We connected our software up to the Edison platform, specifically the Edison Orchestrator kind of fits in here. It provides an interface to the scanners and the PACS. The software processes data just as normal, produces reports like the ones that you can see here, and then that data is fed back to the PACS and RIS. And critically, this project showed that radiologists can use these powerful AI tools completely within their standard software and workflow to report. And this is a zoomed in version of the same thing. So we speed up that volume calculation process. The AI is pretty good at identifying these volumes. This potentially saves the radiologist a minute or two. And then crucially, we identify the areas of suspicion. A lesion here in the apex of the gland. These are one of the most commonly missed types of lesions. Give scores that can then be used to help report. So really, just to summarise, we've got a CE marked medical device that addresses these well-documented needs to improve the accuracy the consistency and resourcing, given all of those challenges that I outlined earlier in the high volume prostate cancer pathway. It integrates straight into the clinical workflow, supporting existing PACS and RIS. We also have our own graphical reporting interface if centres want to produce those rich reports like the one that I showed. I think now, having proven this with the CE mark, we have also major clinical studies underway, which I can talk more about if people are interested, in the NHS. We're at the point where we've got the evidence that technically we can make it work. The accuracy seems to be there. So it's a good time now, I think, to start using this software in the clinic so that we can offer patients the best possible care. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you, Anthony. What we're going to do now is we've got 4.5 minutes for questions. So I'll try and catch you as we go around. If I don't, we will answer afterwards, and of course pop it into chat as we need to go through. So I think the first question is, let me just change that view to go to a different one. Is it Dr. Giri? Got a question for us?
Hi there, I'm Dheeraj, consultant radiologist. Anthony, thank you for the presentation. I've got 3 questions for you. Your sensitivity was around 93, but the specificity was only 76%. Was it because of false positive cases? And if so, what have you changed your algorithm weights since to improve this? And my second question was around the prostate MRI has moved to multi-parametric imaging. Which of the parameters are you using for AI algorithm to work on?
Mm-hmm.
Are you using the contrast perfusion as well? And my third question, you made the cost effectiveness analysis saving £139. I'm just wondering, how did you come to that conclusion? Thank you.
Okay, so good questions. So let me just jump back to the slide that showed the sensitivity and specificity. So actually, that specificity, not false positive rate, the kind of meta-analysis shows that a typical, well, at least the hospitals whose studies were published have specificity of about 50%. So if you're a man without cancer going into this pathway, you've got 50-50 odds that you're going to get a biopsy, even though you don't have cancer. So we're actually looking to improve that specificity. It needs to not, however, be at the expense of sensitivity. 93% sensitivity seems pretty good, and generally we get good feedback about that. In the same meta-analysis, about 85-86% sensitivity overall. That studies like the PROMISE study, which was, I think, 87% sensitivity and 48% specificity. So kind of, doing well. Of course, we want to do better. So one of the things that's underway at the moment is clinical studies to give us real-world data that we can use to try and improve. So my team are continuing to work on the algorithms. Next question was around the parameters that are used, and I'm just going to illustrate this. This is a typical prostate MRI study. We've got T2, ADC, high B-value DWI, and dynamic contrast enhanced imaging over here. Our PI software uses these 4. Only the axial views. If they're sagittal and coronal, we can overlay heat maps on them, but we don't require them for the analysis. And we support both biparametric and multi-parametric operations. So not all hospitals, even in the Emrad network, use DCE. It does help improve accuracy. If you've got it, we use it. If you don't, we can still help with reporting. There's an interesting open research question as to whether AI plus biparametric MRI with a radiologist supervision can actually start to approach the accuracy of MP-MRI, and we would certainly hope that it should. Having said that, there are always going to be small numbers of lesions, especially very small lesions, that are visible on dynamic contrast enhanced imaging, but won't necessarily be apparent on DWI. Then lastly, if I can jump back on the cost effectiveness calculation. So this is a full health economic model that Health Enterprise East produced. The savings are, kind of taking into account, all of the patient touch points, revisits. Biopsies are a large part of that. So if we can cut the biopsy rate, that can certainly contribute to a cost saving. But if you're more sensitive, then actually you can cut treatment costs as well. So we're lucky here in that it's an intervention that hopefully should save money and certainly not cost significant amounts of additional money, according to this independent analysis. Hopefully we've got time for one more question. Thanks. Jackie.
We have, thank you, Anthony. We have just got to the end of the time, unless
All right,
anyone
well, thanks
else
for the great questions.
has anyone else got a question? If not, you know, towards the end, if we do general FAQs and pop it into the chat. But yes, thank you for those quite, as you say, probing questions there onto what we were doing. So, thank you, Anthony. Obviously, stay for the rest of the session, and we will of course provide some feedback later on. So, the next AI provider that we have with the presentation is MADS. So Radiobotics, we again have done some work with Radiobotics over the last year or so with one of their products, but I'm going to let MADS introduce you to the company and introduce you to their AI. So over to yourself, MADS.
Thanks very much. I hope you can all hear me as well. Yeah, first, thanks very much to Emrad for inviting us to participate in this webinar. It's a true privilege to be part of this. We in Radiology have been collaborating with Emrad and Nottingham University Hospital for some time already, both through some grant applications and, as mentioned before, through this program that GE set up last year called the Edison AI Accelerator. Here we managed to do an integration into the radiology system and test one of our products called RBNE to evaluate both the technical and the clinical value, which ended up successfully. So today I will present Radiobotics, but emphasis on this specific product. But first, quickly about me and Radiobotics. My name is Mads. I'm the CEO of Radiobotics. I'm a biomedical engineer by background, specialized in medical image analysis, and I used to work with orthopedic research at Imperial College in London, hence my passion for musculoskeletal science. Radiobotics is a software AI company from Copenhagen, Denmark, creating AI products for radiology, orthopedics, and A&E, where musculoskeletal/MSK X-rays are being taken and read. So in Radiobotics, we're developing AI algorithms for measurement, detection, and classification of MSK X-rays. RBNE, the product with emphasis on today, is an automated knee osteoarthritis detection and reporting tool, part of our portfolio of products we're building to cover all areas of musculoskeletal X-rays. As mentioned, today we'll focus on RBNE, which is the product we've tested already with Emrad. So what RBNE does is that it can automatically detect the radiographic findings related to knee osteoarthritis pathology that a reader would normally assess and report on. It integrates seamlessly into the workflow and appears into PACS and RIS with what's called a secondary capture, where we visually explain what we have found, which is translated into a draft text report, integrating into the reporting module also. I'll get back to that into the features of the product. But first, why is OA or osteoarthritis reporting important? It is because of the very high volume of X-rays that are being reported on, because it's being used very much in routine analysis of knee pain. And this reporting can affect the patient pathway and the cost associated with this, which I'll also come back to. But just for reference, we estimate in Emrad within the network alone that more than 70,000 images of knees X-rays are being taken and examined every year, which is obviously related to a significant time use and a potential influence on many patients' pathways through the system. And this is where we see this product can add value. If we dive into the features of what the product actually does, I used an example here where we see the visual secondary capture that will appear as kind of a visual report into the PACS, appended after the original studies. Here we detect the presence of joint space narrowing, that's the purple lines, osteophytes, that's the yellow arrows, and then subchondral sclerosis, that's the blue dashed lines. Each of these findings are quantified, and we only mark the X-ray with the visual symbols if it's related to pathology, meaning that if there would be no markings in the image, the algorithm did not detect any radiographic osteoarthritic findings. Each of these findings are related to severity grading of osteoarthritis, meaning that, for example, the joint space narrowing, we detect the severity in each compartment of the knee, so both lateral and medial, and for the osteophytes, we detect size and location for both femur, tibia, the medial lateral department, and the eminentia in the middle of the knee. All these findings are then summarized into a severity grading for each compartment and each knee, basically giving a severity grade of osteoarthritis from no osteoarthritis to mild, moderate, and severe osteoarthritis. Whenever we detect a visual finding, as you see on this, we translate that into a description of this feature in a text report. This is an example of the report generated based on this example image, and also a conclusion that can automatically be integrated into the workflow. It will be then integrated in as a draft report, implemented into the reporting module. That means that the reader can basically just review our visual overlay, and if they agree with the visual report, they can accept the generated report and review the image for other secondary findings to report on. This may speed up the reporting process, but more importantly, it adds consistency in how knee osteoarthritis reports are written and how the osteoarthritis is graded. We've done a range of validation activities for this product, including this study that was just published in the European Journal of Radiology, concluding that RBNE has a high agreement with MSK consultant radiologists in severity grading of osteoarthritis. Also worth mentioning is the last part of the quote from the conclusion of the publication, stating this, and also that the tool has value to be used in the daily knee osteoarthritis reporting. We see that RBNE can create value, especially on adding consistency to reporting, which can reduce unnecessary appointments across the pathway, including potential overuse of knee MRIs, where an X-ray would be sufficient. This specifically is something we're currently investigating as part of a government grant in Denmark with Bispebjerg Hospital, seeing if RBNE can be used as a screening tool to make a decision on if the patient needs a knee MRI or not. The hypothesis is that too many patients get an MRI to simply confirm an osteoarthritis diagnosis that, according to the official clinical guidelines, could and should have been done with only an X-ray, which will obviously save cost by reducing the amount of knee MRIs being performed. If we look further into the pathway, we also believe that there is a potential to reduce variation in patient referrals and appointments, which Dr. Sehat here from Nottingham University Hospital confirms in his quote. And looking at the last part of the quote, he states that RBNE introduces consistency in the radiographic measure of severity, which in turn guide clinical primary care and triage facilities to make more optimal decisions. So as an example, this could be to guide to the most appropriate step, if that should be an MRI, a physiotherapy appointment, or an appointment with a surgeon, all obviously done after a holistic examination of the patient, using the X-ray to supplement this. So for RBNE, we also did an evaluation as part of the GE Edison Accelerator with the clinical staff within Emrad, who normally reads these knee X-ray cases, trying out RBNE on knee X-rays from Emrad and local data. And some of the feedback from this was that it has a high agreement with the AI-generated report. The report experience was good, and that RBNE can help in standardized knee OA grading. So this basically confirms all the assumptions and the findings from the clinical study. So overall, we see that the value from using RBNE is primarily to be used in radiology by the reader to increase consistency, which can then eventually create cost savings across the pathway. So RBNE is clinically validated and regulatory approved, and is ready for trial and clinical implementation. So do please reach out to us if you wish to try this out also, and eventually use it in clinical practice to see if this can also reduce some unnecessary or unwanted variation in your reporting. So this is an example of the product we validated in this project, but I also just wanted to use one slide to show one of our other products, or a screenshot of this. This is a tool to aid in detection of fractures of X-rays. This also implements directly into PACS and will immediately after image is taken run the analysis and provide a visual aid and decision support to where the algorithm has detected a fracture. This has the potential to increase the chance of detecting a fracture faster with higher accuracy, and with this also reduce potential unnecessary uncertainty and imaging, and reduce the turnaround time for making a decision for the patient, and by that also potentially the length of stay for the patient at the hospital. We've developed this tool on one of the world's largest and most diverse datasets with a collaboration partner from the US. It's been rigorously tested and it's allowing us to have a very good performance on detecting fractures that may be hard to detect, especially for the untrained eye. The first part of this product we're launching is our hip fracture detection tool, where we made a reader study that showed that we could both increase sensitivity by almost 6% and reduce the amount of overlooked fractures by almost 47%. So this clearly has a value for the acute setting, aiding in detection of fractures on X-rays. So please do also reach out if you wish to try this product also. So that was all for me. Thanks for listening, and I'm looking forward for the discussion.
Lovely, thank you, Mads. Thank you for that presentation. So open to questions, open to the floor. So I can see Dr. Gurra, you are on my list. What would you like to ask Mads?
I'll just check if somebody else wants to answer the question first before we run out of time.
We have David Platten from
Hello.
Lincoln. Hello. Haven't seen you in ages.
No, hello.
Hello.
Mads, I'm a medical physicist working in Lincoln. I was wondering about how well your system copes with edge cases where maybe the X-rays of the knee that you're giving to your system, the projection angle isn't very good, that sort of thing. How robust is it in those sorts of situations?
Thanks for the question. That's a question we get quite often. So for the edge cases where the condyles are overlapping, then we will basically reject the image because in that case we cannot see more than the human eye can see. We need to have a good projection. But if it's just slightly out of angle, then it actually works quite well, at least when we compare it to the manual measurements that has been done. But it is an issue also. If the image is not taken well enough, then the AI would also not perform very well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay, and back to yourself.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mads, for the presentation. You haven't shared performance metrics. I was just wondering what your AUC was.
Yes. So for the knee osteoarthritis tools, we have a lot of different performance metrics on each of the findings. So joint space width, joint space narrowing, osteophytes, sclerosis, and so forth. So all of that can be, you can review our website, or I can send it to you afterwards. But if you look basically at the osteoarthritis grading, so basically from mild, moderate, severe, we follow something called the Kelton-Lawrence scale, which is an academic way, I guess, of measuring severity of osteoarthritis. And for that specifically, discrete detecting from 1 to 4, we have a performance of 0.9 approximately for both the sensitivity and specificity. For the study we did, which I showed in the publication here also, you can also look that up in European Journal of Radiology. There we looked at inter-rater agreement. So we used something called a Cohen-Kappa score, which basically sees how well how much we agree with different groups, and that was a Cohen-Kappa of 0.9 as well.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. Do we have any other questions from the audience for Mads for Radiobotics? Not at the moment then. Okay, again, if you think of anything, just pop it in the chat, and as I say, we can always do some introductions post webinar to the team. So so thank you, Mads. Thank you for your presentation. And we are not, thank you. We like the waving skeleton. We'll have to get that as an emoji for us within radiology. Okay, so next we're going to hear from Mike from ADOC. So Mike, over to yourself. Want to introduce your company? Hello.
Yeah, great. You can hear me then, which is a good start. Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm Mike Burns, UK Ireland National Sales Manager for ADOC, and I'd like to give you a brief introduction to ADOC, our solutions, and then hopefully take some of your questions at the end. So firstly, I wanted to just take you through a few statistics to demonstrate the scale of the challenges facing radiology and A&E in particular at the moment. According to the 2020 RCR workforce census, there is increasing demand for more complex medical imaging. That's going up roughly 10% year on year. The clinical radiology workforce is operating at only about 2/3 adequate capacity. Nearly half of trusts don't have the staff or transfer networks in place needed to provide safe interventional radiology care. And by 2025, the situation is looking like it's going to get much worse, where that shortfall is going to increase to about 44%. You only have to look at the news or be unlucky enough to need to go to A&E at the moment to know the pressure that they're under. These figures are from Emrad sites in February 2020. So you can see that all the trusts are missing the 4-hour waiting time target by quite some distance. Now, ADOC can't help with increasing the workforce, but we can help potentially with lightening the workload. Who are we? We are a leading provider for AI within enterprise imaging, with a focus on the detection and triage of acute, life-threatening and time-sensitive pathologies, mainly on CT. We've developed a comprehensive range of radiology-tailored AI solutions, the ability to notify the wider clinical team responsible for a patient's care in the minutes following a scan, and an AI operating system to make it easier to deploy best-of-breed AI from third-party vendors. ADOC was founded in 2016, and since then we've launched an industry-leading 10 CE marked solutions. We've grown to 350 employees. We're live in now over 900 medical centres around the world, including TMC, Everlight and Fourways in the UK teleradiology market, and we're now processing over 1 million exams per month. We have an industry-leading 29 clinical papers and abstracts supporting the benefits of our solutions. So how does it work? It's not your typical CAD. There's no need for the radiologist or radiographer to select for it to be on or off. The solution is always on, working in the background, searching for relevant scans. Relevant scans are then sent off to the AI for analysis. If an abnormality is found, a notification is sent to the radiologist, and all of this happens in about 5 minutes. So we have the most comprehensive range of solutions on the market today. Everything you see in white is CE marked and commercially available. Everything in blue is under development and due for CE marking in the next 12 to 18 months. The time-sensitive solutions you can see on the top row focus on the sort of super acute pathologies, typically where your patients will be presenting in A&E. Those on the middle row are more your ticking time bombs, which might be sat in a reporting backlog, which could be anywhere from days to months, depending on which trust you're speaking to. And then at the bottom, we have a range of smartphone applications where the AI will trigger a notification and then a workflow for the relevant clinicians responsible for that patient's care in the few minutes following a scan to help them decide on the best course of treatment. The most mature of these solutions are our ones for stroke and pulmonary embolism, but we also have one for ICH, and you can see there are far more in development. From a commercial point of view, we operate as a software as a service model. Customers pay for an annual subscription fee for each module they want to use. We're also on the NHS SPS AI framework, so there is a compliant route to market for the NHS as well. So AI is a very busy marketplace right now, and we have competitors in several different areas. The companies you can see on the screen here are just a selection. However, only ADOC offer this level of comprehensiveness with our own homegrown solutions and the ability then to seamlessly integrate best-of-breed third-party solutions for other pathologies, body parts, modalities, and use cases on a single AI operating system, and therefore the only way to truly deploy AI for radiology at scale. A good algorithm is only the first part of a solution. One of the main ways in which we differentiate ourselves in a very noisy marketplace is through our orchestration capabilities. This means providing the results in a timely manner, but also potentially examining each image for multiple different pathologies. We have four main areas where our users get value from us. Firstly, enhancing quality by reducing misses, prioritizing the most urgent cases, improving efficiency, and these together will lead to improved outcomes for patients. One of the ways we demonstrate our value is through a retrospective analysis of a series of cases to assess what any misdetection rate might have been. This is just a very small selection of studies, and we would look to do the same with sites across Emrad. I can share our full clinical compendium to show you the details of where, of some of these studies and others that show where current partners have also been able to demonstrate improvements. Just to clarify what a 7% enhanced detection rate means for PE at Christina Care, that out of 100 PE positive cases, their radiologists initially would have found 93, and ADOC would have picked up another 7 true positive cases were the solution to have been live at the time. So this is the sort of thing we're trying to avoid. Fairly routine situation where a 70-year-old man falls down the stairs and hits their head. Unfortunately, the radiologist missed a small bleed at the time, at the first instance, which on retrospective analysis, we know ADOC would have picked up. The patient then came back 6 days later with something that obviously can't be missed. Ultimately, that patient needed a craniotomy and had long-term neurological issues. Devastating, clearly, for their patient and their family, and more costly, potentially, for the NHS and social care. This is not going to happen with every missed case, but if we can find 1 or 2 patients a year per imaging network where we can prevent this from happening, it has to be worth it. It's a combination of the enhanced detection coupled with prioritization of the most urgent cases that really makes a difference. Now, this could be in the context of A&E, where you're able to report on, say, an ICH out of sequence and get them admitted or into surgery sooner than they might otherwise have been. Or it might be in this sort of example where a patient comes for a scan, which would sit in a reporting backlog. But with ADOC Live, if an incidental PE was detected, we'd be able to notify the radiologist within 5 minutes of that scan being completed, and crucially, before that patient has got back in their car and driven off home. So why we do what we do is for comments like this that we get from our users, where they tell us a massive PE was found that might otherwise have had disastrous consequences for that patient. But by notifying within a few minutes, we've drastically altered the outcome, potentially even saving that patient's life. What the results from Yale show us is that it's not always the small, clinically less significant incidental PEs that patients are walking around with, or indeed only the small ones that get missed. There is further evidence coming from the Dutch Cancer Institute and a site in Sweden to offer further validation on this particular solution. So around increasing efficiency, we can demonstrate that in a number of ways. The first is around the reduction in read time. Once radiologists trust the solution because of its very high negative predictive value, they tend to spend less time looking for that pathology and focus on looking for everything else. For CTPA, this translates to a reduction of 36%, and for non-contrast head CTs, it's about 10% time saving. Reducing read times means you can report more scans in the same amount of time, or potentially free up time for other tasks. It's a combination of enhanced quality and reduction in reporting turnaround times for positive cases means patients are likely to spend less time in hospital, taking up fewer resources, and ideally spending less time in A&E, reducing the burden being felt so acutely at the moment by your colleagues. So to summarise, we offer a comprehensive range of solutions, AI-based orchestration to enable timely results, processing edge of film findings for both our solutions and our partners, and all with a view to optimising your workflow, make it easier for you and your colleagues to care for your patients. Just want to take the opportunity to thank the Emrad and East Midlands AHSM team for the opportunity to speak today, for your time and attention. Contact details are on the screen in case you would like to get in touch, and I'm very happy to take any questions.
Lovely, thank you, Mike. It's interesting to see the variety of AI companies that you work with there. And I was just sitting here thinking at RSNA there 2 years ago, pre-COVID. I remember looking down on the AI hall of all of the vendors. And unfortunately, quite a few of those have gone to the wayside. We're seeing lots of innovation in this area, lots of suppliers coming through. And as we have found out within Emrad, we're always getting lots of contacts from AI companies. So it's good to see what you have on offer as well. So questions for Mike then. I'm just going to the people and just see who we've got, who's got a question. Dr. Giri, over to you.
Hi, Mike. Good to meet you again.
Hi, Dr. Gary. Hi.
Yeah, just a quick question regarding your licensing models. Could you elaborate on the costs for each module and comprehensive package as such, and whether you've done any ROI in terms of cost effectiveness?
Yeah, sure. So customers will pay an annual subscription fee for our orchestrator, and then an annual subscription fee for each of the modules, and that will depend on whether we put you in a small, medium, or large category of hospital. And I guess as a imaging network, you would sort of perhaps feature more towards the teleradiology end of the spectrum. But essentially, for a large site taking on 3 or 4 modules, you'd be looking in the region of £45,000 to £50,000. And if you were then to scale it from there, it's not linear. Each additional module you take on is a little bit cheaper than the last one. Partner solutions are slightly different. They're sort of bespoke and as required at the time. But I think the advantage of having that orchestrator from us means you only have to pay for it once. To then bolt on additional modules, you don't have to then go through a whole big technical process, costing you time as well as money. You can just literally bolt on additional ones with much easier. And then in terms of the ROI, so we have some very robust ROI models based on data from the US and with a US-based system. We are working on one for the UK, and we know we need one, but it's a much more on the cost saving rather than revenue generating, which is what the US tend to focus on. So once we have some UK data to plug into those models and stress test them, we'd be very happy to do so. And I hope maybe that can happen with Emrad. We'd be very keen to work with you on that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You're all very quiet for a Friday afternoon. We haven't got any more questions in the chat. You're probably all eating your sandwiches. Rathi, we have a question from yourself.
Thanks, Jack. Hi, Mike. That's a really good presentation. Thank you. I think it's more of a comment really rather than a question. I think with where we are going with our community diagnostic hubs and taking imaging out of hospitals into the community, and given our backlogs, I am as a radiologist, I'm always picking up incidental PE about 2 or 3 weeks down the line, and I think your product it's interesting because I can just see it fitting in where we can actually prioritize patients for reporting if on the basis of what you said with both the CT, the bleeds, intracranial bleeds, and the PEs. So yes, it's thanks for your presentation.
No, thank you very much. And the idea is that we get the time to notify down from months, potentially down to minutes. And the Dutch study that's coming out will speak a lot to that, and it's very compelling. And for the CDCs, the more we image patients sort of in these outpatient in these community diagnostic centres away from hospitals, even more crucial that we're able to get those results. So there are now sites in the US that are actually not letting patients go until they've had the results of the AI. So they use it as a screening tool in the few minutes post a scan, and then making sure that once it comes back ADOC negative, fine, that patient can leave. But if it's positive, they know to call a radiologist, confirm that it's a true positive, and then decide on what the best course of action for that particular patient is.
Okay, thank you for that, Mike. Rathi, any further questions from yourself? No. Okay, lovely. I think that concludes the questions for yourself, Mike. So thank you again for your presentation. You're welcome to stay on for just for the next part of the session. So we're now going to hear from, so we've heard from the three providers, and as I said earlier on, lots of innovators at RSNA over the years, lots of AI companies popping up. How are we going to get them to market? How are we going to get them procured? How are we going to get them in via the imaging network? How are we going to do this collaboratively? And how are we going to help with this heavy lifting? So this is just a bit of feedback there. So I'm going to hand you over now to Matt Dunn, Head of Radiation Physics from NUH, who's going to talk about some of the support that we're going to provide, hoping to provide, unless you tell us anything different. So Matt, over to yourself.
Hi everyone. So if you could just move on to the next slide. I've actually got one slide to talk to today, which is unusual for me. So what could Emrad offer to AI companies? So this is a sales pitch, I guess, to the companies and also to the members of Emrad if you're talking to AI companies to try and persuade them that we are going to be a really good partner to work with on AI. So firstly, you'll get access to an Emrad group dedicated to using AI to benefit healthcare, and that's really important. If you could advance the slides for me, if you actually just put all of the bullet points, thank you. So it's a forum for people to present ideas. If people have got a good product that they think will be useful, if the companies have got a product they think will be useful, we can present it to a range of people to gauge the clinical impact and enthusiasm for a particular innovation, to see whether it's something that we think would benefit patients, would be viable, would be beneficial, all those types of things. The Emrad network provides access to imaging experts, and I put imaging in inverted commas because imaging experts encompasses a range of experts. So we've got the sort of fairly obvious clinical radiologists and radiographers, but also healthcare scientists in imaging and bioinformatics. And I mentioned the healthcare scientists element for things like making sure things like protocols are correct, making sure that the company's innovations can be evaluated properly. In the past, some of the AI companies have perhaps marked their own homework, so we can provide an independent evaluation of whether the algorithms are providing the benefits and the outcomes that the companies claim. And also Emrad brings the sort of non-clinical aspects, the sort of IT governance and research expertise, which are really, really important to getting these innovations into use, effectively. So one of the biggest challenges with AI is actually getting it into the patient pathway and making it an effective an effective product actually in practice. So it's all very well if the science and the technology works and the algorithms detect the cancers, the tumors, the arthritis or whatever, but actually if it doesn't fit into the workflow, into the products that the clinical staff are using, then the benefits are limited. So in Emrad, we will have access to a network of all of these people across all of the Emrad trusts, and we have a wide range of expertise in lots of different areas. So that's really important. And then the final point is that we are a mature imaging network, and we have a shared vision amongst the Emrad organisations. We look after a patient population of about 5 million, which if you think in terms of the data we have access to is really quite powerful. We have knowledgeable staff, and this forum should make the Emrad family more knowledge about how to implement AI, which products are useful, get them into patient care really effectively and easily. And also, we've already got robust data sharing and governance arrangements, and we're working on the sort of trusted data environment and the curation of the data, which again will be really important for testing out the algorithms with companies. So these are all really important things that I think Emrad will be able to offer to our companies and be a really good partner. So if you are talking to companies as an Emrad member, please be positive about the things that we can offer to support companies if they want to approach us as a partner and develop their innovations with us. And I think I'll stop there.
Lovely. Thank you, Matt. Okay, the next 10 minutes or so, we're just going to just talk about a few of the areas that Emrad actually to add to Matt's slides. So over the last few years, you may or may not be aware of some of the AI that Emrad have been working on. So as part of the AI and Healthcare Awards, we were working with Chiron, who've since gone on and working with 15 other trusts, I think is part of that word, continue with the breast AI. We are planning a conversation with them in the next month to sort of see where they've got to. And again, how would that work if it was to come back by the imaging network? We've been working, as we said earlier on, with Lucida and with Radiobotics, and just picking up on the discussion around an AI orchestrator that Mike was talking about. One of the things that we found with all of the AI, that actually getting it integrated into the workflow. So how does it actually impact on the end user? That is the key bit. It might be a fantastic piece of AI, but if the workflow doesn't work and it makes it more problematic for the clinician or then for the patient in terms of access, it's not going to be adopted. So Jan is on the call from GE. Jan, do you just want to say a few words on what we were doing within the AI orchestrator pilot, or the Edison orchestrator? Lots of names for the same piece of work that we're talking to. Jan,
thank you very much, Jacqueline. I hope you can.
Hello.
I hope you can hear me well.
We can.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm in the car, and I hope the audio quality is okay for the next couple of minutes. And thanks a lot, Jacqueline, for the short notice invitation to speak up here. Really appreciate. And it's great to see, by the way, a lot of great partners and friends in this call today. So good luck with the following sessions. I'm more than happy to join and contribute as best as we can. So Jacqueline, AI orchestration, you're absolutely right. This is a pretty important and very timely topic from my standpoint, and I try to tell you why. So let me maybe zoom out a little bit and just try to explain the problem from my perspective, what we want to address with what like the industry nowadays calls AI orchestration. Look, I mean, you've seen now 3 fantastic artificial intelligence solutions, right? Fantastic companies with great products, and I think a great roadmap ahead. And when you think about what we want to achieve with artificial intelligence solutions in the radiology space in terms of decision support, right? What we want to do is we want to get to more efficiency, to more productivity, to better quality, and ultimately, of course, better patient outcomes. But the reality today is that, right, and the most of you know this much better than I know it, the radiologist is like digital since 15 plus years. You are sitting in front of a digital workspace since a long, long time. And now what happens is that on top of your existing reporting and PACS type of systems and voice recognition systems, now you get AI products for very niche or narrow use cases. Yeah. And as of today, there are about 200 AI algorithms available, right, commercially available for radiology. And when I say commercially available, I'm meaning either FDA approved or CE marked. And those roughly 200 algorithm products are coming from about 50 different vendors. So imagine
Oh, might just be some experiencing some technical difficulties there. Might just gone under a bridge, metaphorically. Oh, we might have lost Jan just for a moment. Oh no, you're back.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry for this. I just faced some issues we have in Germany still with the network, even in big cities. I'm sorry for this. I don't know when you lost me, but I was just saying that, right, radiologist is digital, as the most of you know, since a long, long time, very used to like digital workflows. And now those AI algorithms are coming into the market, into your day-to-day reporting workflows to support you. Yeah, The issue is that, again, all of those different algorithms, or a lot of them, are coming from different vendors, which all have a different approach, of course, to user experience, user interface design, and so on and so forth. So imagine in a couple of years from now, when you use multiple of those different algorithms for a variety of different use cases, and they are just loosely integrated into your existing systems, when you do, I don't know, when you need lung nodule detection, you open one vendor's AI toolbar and so on. You have to learn how this works. You have to learn eventually the workflows. Then you open, I don't know, a case where it's all about brain bleeds. You have another AI, it looks different, it behaves different. You have to get used to this. And what I want to say by this is, if we as an industry not start thinking about how we really seamlessly integrate those algorithms into existing radiology reporting workflows, and beside to continue to build those great individual applications, of course, if we not think about and provide solutions to integrate them seamlessly, there is a likelihood that we end up in the opposite, right? With less productivity, less efficiency, less quality. And therefore, this term AI orchestration, Jacqueline, from my perspective, is critically important. Just as a quick intro, is this helpful?
It is, yes. Thank you very much, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us whilst you're driving there. So I wish you a safe journey on the rest of it. So thank you, Jan. So we're just going to move towards our wrap up now in terms of the what's happening next. So I'm just going to Emily, if you could just share the next slide for me, please. So where are we now? AI takes time to implement, as we've heard from all of our speakers, and introduction from Ian, Matt, and Mike. It's complex. One size isn't going to fit all, but what we're hoping to do as an imaging network is take out some of that heavy lifting for you. So again, as we've had the process from Mike, how do we make it easier for AI companies to approach the imaging network, so you don't have to have a conversation with 8 trusts? How do we get that in? How do we cull some of the conversations and make it easier to get to the right people at the right time with the right information and ask the right questions? And then, as we say, move the AI, move it through. What we are keen to understand then is what do you require? What is it that you need? What are the particular pinch points? Have you heard of an AI company? If you had some conversations that you can introduce us, say, so that we can streamline the process. You know, there might be something that is suitable for one of the small trusts and not suitable for a teaching trust, and vice versa. So it might be local, we might be presenting something at scale. How do we support the workforce, and ultimately, how do we support our patients? We've been working recently with the with NHS E&I in terms of funding, and there's a lot of work, as you know, with the Digital Diagnostic Capability Fund. Again, how do we fund all of these projects? There's the CDCs coming along, so again, that's more resources, more workforce. Again, how do we look at funding? How do we implement this stuff? So there's a lot of unknowns, but I think what there is definitely is a lot of desire to now safely and efficiently explore this space in AI. This slide that I've got on here is just a list of some of the areas of funding that we could potentially start to look at and help us through that journey. And again, as we said earlier, the EHSN will help us with in terms of evaluation and anything else. And as Matt also talked about within his slide, in terms of the imaging experts, we are not all the experts. So again, we do know that there's going to be a raft of roles that need to come up. And again, the NHS isn't always got the right roles with the right people at the right time. So we know there's a lack of data scientists to evaluate some of the data that comes out. We know there's, say, a whole group of people that we need to include. We have Tom on the call. Tom Swain is an AI researcher role, you know, and again, that's a new role that's starting to come into the NHS. You know, so we're keen to explore, is there an equivalent of that role within each trust that you can help us? So by all means, if you think you can help us with our forum and you wish to be on our panel to support us, then again, get in touch. We have Rory King on the call, you know, head of IG now for Emrad, but again, we know that one of the areas that has been quite complex and challenging on occasions over the last few years is around the sharing governance. You know, is it research? Where do we look at the ethics? Is it straightforward evaluation? So again, lots of areas, never going to be one straight answer for everything we do. So really what happens next, I'm just going to give you a quick update on that, and then I'm going to hand you back to Ian for the last few words. But next slide, please, Emily. So in terms of next step, there will be a recording of the session, and say if we've got any questions, then please get in touch with us or drop us a line in the chat. The last slide that we're going to put on a moment is another QR code for you, which will take you, you can either do it on your phone, click on the screen, and again, that will take you to a survey. And that's where you'll be able to just give us some feedback. What would you like to see next? Who would you like us to line up? Would you like this monthly, quarterly, biannually? How would you like us to present back to share with you what's happening in this AI space? So I'm going to pass you back over to Ian, and then if anyone else would like to add anything or any other questions, then just please again just pop it in the chat. So Ian, over to yourself.
Thanks, Jack. So just kind of starting to wrap up, I've got a couple of thanks and then a couple of asks of you guys as well, one of which is reiterating the feedback survey. But I hope you've enjoyed that and found it useful. I've certainly enjoyed it. So thank you to the companies for the presentations. I think they're incredibly thought-provoking. And that's nice, because it's always good to have questions. It's nice to have answers, but if you've got questions, then at least you know where you're going. Thanks to the other guys involved as well. Jack and Emily have done a huge amount of work to get this over the line. Dami's been beavering away preparing these links and these surveys, so thank you to them. Thank you to the AHSN and Mike and Tim for supporting on this. Their experience and wisdom has been invaluable. And from my point of view, I think what we've seen here is that AI is a very versatile beast. We've had 3 different presentations about different applications of it. Some bits of it are things like safety netting, trying to pick up bits that might be missed. Some of it's about the reporting confidence and helping your reporters to interact with the images more confidently. Some of it's about prioritization and flagging up things within the system that need more urgent attention. There will be a million other applications as well, scheduling, appointment times, kind of efficiencies within modalities. And what I'd ask of you, other than filling in that survey link that neatly appeared there, I'd encourage you to go away and think about how this might work for you, because as you've heard, it's different in different environments. And yeah, it would be lovely to have a prioritization, but how do you cope with that? Do you have the software that can cope with that? Are you signing up to an orchestrator that can deal with that level of information? Do you have the staff that can deal with that level of information and the flexibility to jump around like that? And then perhaps more importantly, and more fundamentally, what do you do with all of this? What impact does it have on your patients and what impact does it have on your staff? So if you have an algorithm that helps free up 2 MRI slots in a list, what do you do with those slots? Do you stick 2 more patients in them? Flog your MR radiographers even harder than you already are? Or do you use it for something else, education or even just downtime? And I don't think there are right and wrong answers to this. There are just considerations. So next steps, I think, are very much up to you guys. Please do think about it, but please do get back in touch with us, either about the bits you've seen today or hopes and desires that you've got for the future, or questions about need, questions about things that we can develop. We are slightly feeling our way here, but we're here to help, and we can't really do that without a dialogue with you all. So again, thank you very much for your time and energy today, and safe onward travels, but please keep talking to us.
Lovely. Thank you, Ian. So once again, thank you for myself. Thank you from the team. Thank you for everyone attending. It's Friday afternoon. It's not quite crackerjack, but enjoy the rest of the day. QR code's there, and we'll see you all on the next one. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
I think we're alone now.
Yes.
Just helping kick out a few people at the end there.
What I'm just going to do, guys, is I'm just going to close the call because we are recording this, and I'll invite you back into another call and we can have a little bit of a debrief.
Right.
Otherwise, this will be on a call. So thank you very much. You want to log off, and Emily will just send you a very quick call in a minute. We'll just have a bit of a debrief. Thank you, and I'll get some paracetamol in between.